What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It is time to give you my game picks and predictions heading into Week 8 of the 2024 college football season. Going back to my game picks and predictions from last week in Week 7, my overall record was 8-2. So I had a really good weekend this past weekend. We had some big-time games, so I did go 8-2 in that big-time weekend. And so I got 2 out of the 10 games wrong and everything, so I only got 2 games wrong, but then 8 out of the 10 games right. Again, just overall a pretty good record from last week from me. And my overall record now is officially 43-27, I believe. So, yeah, I've had a really good season of college football this year, no question about it, at picking games and also picking what the final scores will be, even though score predictions don't really matter. But we got Week 8 this weekend. This is a big weekend of college football. Really tough to kind of pick the 10 of the biggest games, in my opinion, that I think are really big, and giving you predictions for all these games. These are really tough to predict, but we're going to do it anyway. Picked out of the 10 of the biggest games, in my opinion, for Week 8. So let's go ahead and get right into it here with my game picks and predictions. And we'll start here with an ACC conference game. We got Miami versus Louisville, this one at noon Eastern time on ABC. Miami's favored by 5 in this one. Louisville coming in, probably a lot of hype in this one because they're playing at home. They had that close win against Virginia last week. They nearly lost that game. You know, Louisville's not really probably the same, team like they were from last year, but they're still really well coached. This is a Louisville team that I think will be really fired up. They're taking on a top 10 team in Miami that's 6-0. They had a bye week this past weekend, so Miami's had an extra time to kind of prepare here for this game, and this is also a road game. We've seen Miami kind of struggle the last couple weeks against California. They played that game on the road. That game was really close to being an upset, but Miami was able to pull it out. It seems like Miami's been a second-half team, in the last couple weeks, but, they beat Virginia Tech and both Cal there, due to second-half comebacks. I think it's another one of these games. I think Louisville definitely has a shot to pull off the upset here, but I just look at this Miami team. I feel like the talent is just there for them, and I think they're slightly a more talented team than Louisville is. I know Jeff Brom's done a pretty good job at Louisville since from last year, but I just like this Miami team. I think it's another one of those second-half comebacks. Miami pulls it out, though, and I think they win this one, 37-34. That is what my score prediction is going to be. I think Louisville has the lead pretty much throughout the entire game. Cam Ward makes some explosive plays in the fourth quarter. A turnover can probably change the difference, or it could be a game-winning field goal. You never know, but I got Miami winning this one, 37-34. Next up, we got another ACC conference game. It's Virginia and Clemson at noon Eastern time as well on the ACC network. Clemson favored by 21.5. This is not necessarily a big game. I kind of wanted to, to talk about Virginia. Virginia nearly beat Louisville last week. I just talked about that. This is a Virginia team that seems like it's heading in the right direction. They're 4-2. This is not a bad Virginia team. Yes, they were not really that good last year, but they seem like they're heading in the right direction this year. But it's going to be tough here against Clemson. They play on the road here in Death Valley, one of the toughest places to play in the country. And also in this conference as well. Clemson's been on a row ever since that Georgia game. I feel like I've had Clemson in my game picks and prediction videos for like the last few weeks, but I just thought I would talk about Virginia here. I know this is not a big game. I don't really expect it a close game whatsoever. And I don't think it's going to be a game where I think, Virginia doesn't even get close whatsoever. I think Clemson's offense is just too explosive, and I think it won't be enough here. I think Virginia doesn't really compete here at all. So I think Clemson wins this one big here, 42-10. So yeah, kind of a blowout here if Clemson was playing like a cupcake opponent, but it's an ACC conference game. Can't really say they scored like over 60 points, but I got Clemson winning this one 42-10 anyway. Next up, Nebraska versus Indiana, also at noon Eastern time. This is the big Fox Noon kickoff game here. Indiana favored by 6.5, and the over and under is at 50.5. You got Indiana that's undefeated at 6-0, ranked number 16th in the AP poll. Yeah, they've been a big surprise this year, but Indiana really hasn't been tested yet. The question is, are they going to be, tested here in this game? I think they will. Nebraska's a pretty talented team. They got, the freshman quarterback in Dylan Raiola. Got off to a pretty good start in the first half of the year, but he's been tested already now these days. I think going into the second half of the season, though, Nate Raiola is going to be a lot better, and I think he's going to get better and better with his future here at Nebraska. But the question is, can Nebraska win those close games here in the second half of the season? They get to a bowl game here already. This is a much better Nebraska team than it was from last year. This is a game that can really go either way. I think Indiana, though, they're playing at home in this one. I would say I would go with Indiana here, but I'm actually going to go with the upset here. I got Nebraska beating Indiana here on the road, 28-24. Again, Indiana hasn't been tested all year long, so we don't know how good this team really is. I know they've already beaten like several Big Ten teams, but the teams that they've beaten in the Big Ten already, those teams are not really that good, and Indiana hasn't really gotten to their tough schedule until now, so they'll play their toughest part of the schedule down the stretch for the rest of these 7 games that they'll play, and this is one of them. Nebraska is a pretty good team, and I'm going to go with the upset here. Cornhuskers pull it off 28-24. Next up, Auburn versus Missouri, another noon Eastern time game on ESPN. Missouri favored by 4.5. We got the Battle of the Tigers here. Missouri, they bounced back after the loss to Texas A&M a couple weeks ago. They lost that game like 41-10, but they beat UMass. We still kind of don't know how good Missouri is, but we knew they were not a top 10 team in the preseason based off of that Texas A&M game and everything. We know Missouri is still a top 25 team. Yeah, don't get me wrong, Missouri is a pretty good team, but that was the first time they were tested all year, and we know that Texas A&M was much more talented than Missouri, but you look at this game against Auburn, I think both of these teams are pretty even. I think this is a must-win here for Auburn, to be honest, because if they don't win this game, I feel like they're not going to get to a bowl game at all, because it's been a really struggling season here for Auburn. The quarterback position's kind of been a concern. But, Hugh Freeze, I think he'll get it done, pretty much in the future, but it's just not really that time right now. Auburn's a little bit different from last year. I think Missouri playing at home gets it done, though. I think it's a close game, but I'm going to go with the home field advantage. I think a turnover maybe changes the difference here. I'm going to go with Missouri, though, to win it 27-20. Again, Auburn's struggling this year. I just don't really see them winning this one, so I got Missouri winning this one 27-20. All right, this is a big one here. Alabama and Tennessee, the third Saturday of October. This one's at 3:30 Eastern Time on ABC. Alabama's favored by 3. You got both of these teams at 5-1 with identical records. Both teams ranked in the top 15. This is always a really good matchup here between Tennessee and Alabama, even though the Crimson Tide have dominated the series in the course like in the past 3 decades. But now with Nick Saban gone, 2 different coaches going at it here. Josh Heupel's been here longer than Kalen DeBoer has. We're kind of expecting some points to be scored here. I think both offenses are pretty even. I talked about this in the upset alert video from yesterday. I think it's going to come down to whoever has the better defense, but I think it will be a shootout here between these 2 teams. And I've been really back and forth on this game. In the preseason, I did pick Tennessee here to pull it off. I'm still going to go with my preseason pick here. Alabama's kind of struggled in the last couple of weeks. Their defense has really struggled to stop, South Carolina and Vanderbilt the last couple of weeks. And I think against a high-powered Tennessee offense, I think that's going to really, really cost Alabama just a little bit. I think Tennessee will kind of struggle on the defense as well at stopping Jalen Milroe with his legs, but I think home field advantage and a turnover probably changes the difference. And this place also will be really loud. I think it's going to be a tough environment here for Alabama. We've seen Alabama kind of struggle on the road already against Vanderbilt already, but that was not a tough place to play. This is one of their toughest environments that they'll play at, and I'm going to go with Tennessee here, 35-31. So yeah, some points will be scored here. I think it probably could be a defensive battle in the first half, but I think second half it could be a high-scoring game, and I think both offenses will get it going. But I got Tennessee pulling off the upset here in Knoxville, 35-31. Next up, Notre Dame and Georgia Tech at 3:30 Eastern Time on ESPN. Notre Dame favored by 11. Notre Dame at number 12th in the AP poll. This is definitely one of those upset alert type games. You look at Notre Dame coming off that easy win against Stanford. Notre Dame's kind of a little bit better ever since they lost to Notre in Illinois. This is looking like a very talented team, but this is a Georgia Tech team, I'm telling you. They are really legit. You know, they are definitely a team that can definitely spoil Notre Dame's playoff hopes. I was kind of back and forth on this game. You know, Georgia Tech in the preseason, I did pick Notre Dame to beat Georgia Tech, but now when I look at my preseason pick, I don't feel as confident. I think Georgia Tech in this game, they're going to try to run the football, really wear down that Notre Dame defensive line, and I think they'll probably throw it some. But Haynes King will definitely use his legs, and I think that's going to be a big struggle for Notre Dame to stop. So with that being said, I think Georgia Tech pulls it off here. I think they pull off the upset, so I'm picking some upsets this weekend. I don't really feel confident with, you know, the pick with Nebraska and Indiana, but maybe I do kind of feel confident with this one because we've seen Notre Dame struggle at times and play their worst games. But I got Georgia Tech winning it here 27-24. I think they pull off the upset here. Next one, we got Michigan and Illinois in the Big Ten, 3:30 Eastern Time on ESPN. Michigan's favored by 3.5, and the over and under is at 43.5. You got Illinois coming off that overtime win against Purdue, 50-49. That was a shootout between those two teams. Yeah, Illinois has been a surprise team. They're 5-1. They have the home field advantage in this game. They're ranked number 22 in the AP poll. They've been a big surprise this year. Michigan on the other side, coming out of a bye week, ranked number 24 in the AP poll at 4-2. A couple weeks ago, they lost to Washington on the road. Yeah, this Michigan team has really struggled on the offensive side of the football. They're definitely not the same offensive team that we've seen over the years, you know, running the football pretty well, and then obviously they don't have a passing game. That's been the big struggle this year for Michigan as well. Illinois has the home field advantage. It's a very tough place to play. I am very surprised that Michigan is favored in this one, and this was not on the upset alert video from yesterday, but I'm going to go with the upset anyway. I think Illinois pulls it off, and it's a low-scoring type game. Again, Michigan doesn't really have a great offense, and I think their defense might, you know, give them some hope, but it just won't be enough. Illinois pulls it off 17-13. I think Illinois comes out really fired up because it's against a Michigan team that, you know, obviously they beat them last year, but, you know, Michigan beat Illinois last year, so I do expect a close game here. Illinois and Michigan, this one at 3:30 Eastern Time, but I got the Fighting Illini 17-13. Now, in the preseason, I did pick Illinois at first, then I changed my pick. I don't really feel confident with Michigan now, so I got Illinois pulling off the upset here. And then next up, SEC Conference game, LSU versus Arkansas. Rivalry game at 7 o'clock Eastern Time on ESPN. LSU's favored by 2.5. This is another one of those upset alert type games. You got Arkansas coming in at 4-2. They're pretty good. They are coming out of a bye week and everything. They have been having like a really good season as well. Arkansas has pulled off an upset already this year. They done that against Tennessee back on like September the 28th, or no, October 5th, I should say. That was a couple weeks ago. Can they do it again here against LSU? I mean, LSU, you know, obviously coming off that win against Ole Miss, it was a physical game in overtime. You kind of, you know, got to feel that LSU is kind of beat up after that one, after, you know, all the, like all the issues that they had in that game, because Ole Miss looked like the better team, but LSU somehow pulled it off here. And again, that game was in Death Valley. This one's in Fayetteville. It's a very tough place to play. I'm actually going to go with the upset here. I think Arkansas pulls it off. They've done it before. I think their defense comes out fired up like they did against Tennessee a couple weeks ago, and they pull it off here, 24-21. You got LSU's quarterback that's not like a running quarterback like how Jaden Daniels was. That hurt Arkansas last year, but this year without him, I think Arkansas definitely will be a lot better on the defensive side of the football. So I got the Razorbacks pulling it off 24-21. And then we got the big one here in the SEC. It's Georgia versus Texas. This one's at 7:30 Eastern Time on ABC. Texas favored by 5. That spread has gone up a little bit ever since, you know, a couple days ago. Texas, they're ranked number 1 in the AP poll. They're 6-0. Texas hasn't been really tested all year long, to be honest. I know that Michigan game back in like week number 2 is probably their toughest competition, but it really wasn't. That game, Texas definitely looked like the better team, and Michigan isn't just really that good, to be honest. Texas, though, this will be their first test. You know, they're taking on a Georgia team that's one of the top programs, you know, in this new decade and everything. But Georgia, you know, on the other side, they had that one loss to Alabama. They struggled against Kentucky on the road. They struggled against Mississippi State this past weekend. which Georgia team will show up? I mean, that's going to be the question here. Will Georgia show up in this game? Will they be like Georgia on Georgia, or are they going to be like bringing their B game? To be honest, like they have to bring their A game. If they bring their A game in this one, they'll make this a really close game, and I think they can win it. But if they don't, I think they're going to probably struggle here in this one. Now in the preseason, I did pick Georgia to win this one, but the way that Texas has played this year, and also the way they've been, dominating some teams, I think that's going to be a big factor here. And plus, they're playing at home. This is a very tough one to call. And I'm actually going to go with Texas here. I'm going to change my pick here from the preseason, and I'm going to go with the Longhorns here, 31-28. Yeah, I don't feel confident with this pick, but I'm going to go with it anyway just because of Georgia, kind of struggling a little bit. And I also think playing on the road, the way they've struggled on the road this year, that's going to get to them as well. So I got Texas winning it 31-28. And this is a big game. College game day, of course, will be down there. It's the game of the weekend and definitely the biggest game in the SEC this year. And then finally, we got Kentucky versus Florida at 7:45 Eastern Time on the SEC Network. Kentucky favored in this one by 1.5. That really surprises me a lot. Florida's playing at home in this one in Gainesville. It's a very tough place to play at the Swamp. Both teams coming off really tough losses last week. Kentucky coming off that embarrassing loss to Vanderbilt. That was one of the most embarrassing losses I think Kentucky has had in the Mark Stoops era in quite a while. It's happened before, though. A couple years ago it happened, but Kentucky, they're favored in this game just probably because they have the better team and everything. But you look at Florida, they're coming off that loss to Tennessee. Florida looked like the better team in the first half, but second half, Tennessee just dominated the running game, and also they dominated, on the offensive side of the football in the second half. They did go to overtime in that game, but Florida, they're playing at home in this one. You kind of expect them to be, a little bit angry after that loss to Tennessee. And they're taking on a Kentucky team that's really struggled on the offensive side of the football. I mean, both teams have kind of had their struggles on the offense this year. And, Graham Mertz might be out of this game for Florida, but they got DJ Lagway, who's a backup quarterback, and he does really well with his legs. So I think that's going to be a really big problem for Kentucky. That was a big disadvantage for Kentucky from last week when they, try to sack Diego and everything. And I think that's going to be a problem here for Kentucky. I think this is a low-scoring type defensive battle. But I'm actually going to go with Florida here to pull off maybe a slight upset, to be honest, because I think this is a very important game for both of these teams. I think the winner of this game likely can make it to a bowl game somehow. Both of these teams have very tough schedules in the SEC. But I got Florida winning it here, 21-17, a low-scoring type game. So those are my game picks and predictions heading into Week 8 of the 2024 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about these picks and predictions, and also give me your picks for these 10 games down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports YouTube channel.